Boa tarde, pessoal. Bem-vindos a mais um Rascunhos Econômicos. Eu sou o Léo e hoje nós temos um convidado mais do que especial e a partir de agora eu vou falar em inglês. Hello, dear Professor Goetzmann. Sorry if I say your name wrongly. Professor Goetzmann, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you very much to accept my invitation. To Rascunhos Econômicos, a Brazilian scientific outreach channel dedicated to present economic theory, monetary history, and financial debates with academic rigor and historical gravity to a Portuguese-speaking audience. Professor Goetzmann is professor of finance and management studied at Yale University, one of the world's leading research institutions. At Yale School of Management, he also serves as faculty director of International Center for Finance. And as everyone can see, I'm a bit nervous to have you here, Professor. Thank you very much for the honor to be here. And I think it's very important to have one of the most important authorities in this field of history of finance. And I have to say that I read almost all of your articles and I watched all of your videos that is available in YouTube. Professor Goetzmann, can we start asking you how civilizations have dealt with finance along the history?
Well, that's a big question. But first, let me encourage you not to be nervous. I really enjoy speaking with people that are interested in financial history and the bigger picture of the role of finance in culture. So I'm looking forward to our conversation, and I'm honored that you have invited me onto this broadcast. You're asking me a big question about the role of finance in society and in the trajectory of historical development of humankind. And that is the topic of one of my books called Money Changes Everything. And it's a book that starts with the Babylonian development of financial tools and goes all the way up to modern times. And I wrote the book because I wanted people who were just comfortable with reading history and interested in history to understand and think more about the role of finance. So it's not written for a finance specialization. It's not written for people who know all about stock markets. It's written for people who are genuinely curious about, what is this thing we call finance, and so what does it mean to people in history and today? So I can tell you just the big picture of the book, which is that let's treat finance as a tool, not as a field of research, not as a belief system, not as an institution. Let's treat finance as a technology that humankind has developed in order to solve important problems of time and money. So that's the theme of the book. And every civilization, every culture has to deal with the problem of moving value back and forth through time, through things like loans, things like coins and money that you can use as a store of value, and also tools that allow people to save for the future, for their retirement. Those are sort of big picture things that finance is designed to improve, and it's an evolving technology. So I'll leave it at that, but that's the overview of my interest in what the book is about.
Once I saw you in an interview saying that in ancient Greece, the Greeks are not able to produce all food that they need to, and the simple challenge to bring all this food to that people in the ancient times, they need finance, no, to go to Black Sea. And do you think, Professor, that the development of a society is very attached with the development of this technology of finance?
Yes, the case of ancient Athens is particularly interesting. And before I started my work, I really didn't understand that Athens really couldn't exist as a large city without the ability to send boats out to places and collect grain and bring the grain back for people to feed themselves. Um, you imagine that a big city would have its own agricultural resources and then supply their markets locally. But Athens was an interesting case that was able to structure an import business that depended upon grain from Egypt and from the Black Sea, both, and bring that grain hundreds of kilometers across really risky seas through time in order to have a supply of bread for their people. So how did they do that? Well, they used market forces in order to incentivize ship captains and merchants and so forth to go on these risky voyages. And the technology they developed to do that, two kinds. One is something that is a simple concept, but it's important. It's a loan. So there was a lending market for entrepreneurs who were going to go out from Athens to what's now Ukraine, in fact, where a lot of the grain from Athens was grain to Athens was grown. And so the loan was a sea loan that supplied the capital to buy trade goods in Athens and then ship them all the way up through the Bosphorus, all the way along the coast of the east coast of the Black Sea, and to buy trade the goods for grain. And so that loan made possible these trips in a way that you really couldn't have done before. The other thing is that there were bankers, there were intermediaries in Athens and in Piraeus, which is the port of Athens, who were intermediaries that could find people that wanted to invest money and find captains and entrepreneurs that wanted to borrow the money. And so, and at the same time, these bankers were also taking deposits, and so the beginnings of banking we could trace to Athens, and the beginnings of the investment system based upon lending that made possible long distance voyages. So that was an extraordinary period in human history that at least we have some historical record of. Probably developed in other places and at other times, but with Athens we have a rich archival source, or at least a rich historical source to be able to document these innovations.
We are talking about like already a bit developing society now, but you have mentioned that in another places maybe it has happened as well. Can we talk about a bit more back in the history, like Sumerians or Babylonians? The trade that they, because I live nowadays in Armenia, and I live near the, I don't know if you know, here there is the civilization of Urartu, no, like the archaeological place. I live very near one archaeological place. Here there's not a lot of things that are necessary to grow a civilization. Like wood wasn't available near Sumeria as much that they need. Like in Egypt, there was no stones as much they need, like in that by their capacity to logistic, let's say like that. So, Professor, how if you are okay for this kind of question, how do you think the first registers, or the first idea, if we can give this logical bridge, let's say like that, uh, that people start to do trade using coins or contracts, let's say like that?
Well, you're asking how did all of this start, and uh, why did it start in such an unusual place? And I love that question because I'm particularly fascinated with the Babylonian and Sumerian time period. Um, Before I was a finance professor, many years before, I started my career as an archaeology student. And I spent one season in the field in northern Syria, working at a site called Tel Leilan, which was once a city that was on a trade route between the merchant city of Ashur and a city in north central Anatolia, and the trade route developed because the people of the Babylonian people, which let's say it's about 1800 to 2000 BCE, so that would be a time period I'm talking about now. The people of Assyria and Babylonia used silver as a currency. Now, silver not in coins, but silver by weight, and so they would weigh out weigh out silver by shekels is what they called them. Of course, that's a modern Hebrew word too, and the so that became the money supply of this civilization. Now, where do you get silver? Well, silver is not mined in the Fertile Crescent, the area of Iraq and Syria. Those are floodplains of these great rivers, and silver comes from places that you would mine mostly in mountainous areas. The Anatolia had silver mines, and so these traders that went from the city of Ashur, which became the capital of the Assyrian Empire, um, would uh, would bring textiles to trade, and they would make this 3 month long trip. They'd trade the textiles for silver. They'd bring the silver back, and that was the money supply. So it's kind of an interesting situation. Uh, and it was the beginning of the world's fascination with the textiles produced in the Middle East. We still prize carpets, for example, that come from Iran, and it's a fascination with a particular kind of aesthetic good that became the lifeblood of generating metallic money in the world's first civilizations. So, anyway, that's a long winded description of this interesting trade that created the idea of money and the role of money in an emerging constellation of cities throughout the ancient Near East in the Tigris and Euphrates valleys.
But Professor, to come from Ashur until Anatolia, like Armenian plateau, no, was 3 months travel to do so.
I think so. It was a long trip, and the way that it worked and the financial technology that was involved is that because it took a long time to go back and forth, um, the Assyrian merchants would take a bunch of donkeys and pack them with these textiles that come from factories, probably some of them further south, some of them in Ashur itself. And so they would create a caravan, which is now fairly familiar to people. and the caravan would go up along a route, and all along the way there were cities that they would pay their tolls and taxes to pass safely through. Once they got to the Taurus Mountains, they were going through mountain passes, and they got to a city near the city of Kaiserlei, now in Turkey, called Kanesh. And Kanesh was a completely foreign city. They didn't speak the same language as the Assyrians, but the Assyrians created a merchant neighborhood in the city, and over generations, these Assyrian traders would go back and forth to trade in Anatolia. Now, the technology that they also created in order to finance that trade was the trading partnership. So it allowed for investors who were not involved in the trade at all to give silver into a partnership, and invest silver in the partnership. And then the silver would be used to pay for the textiles. And then over the years, you would benefit as a partner in the profits generated by the textile trade with the Anatolians. And those partnerships were legal structures that allowed the collection of sufficient capital to have very substantial trade. These partnerships were we know about them actually from the cuneiform tablets that were kept in Kanesh, in the trading area. And the reason they kept the tablets is because many of them were about lawsuits that would occur. Lawsuits with investors angry about not getting their return on their investments. Lawsuits about loans that were made to the partnership. Even disputes amongst fathers and children about their role in the partnership. So these were a rich set of documents that revealed to us that the written word was necessary to maintain a legal system to support the complex contractual nature of finance, even so long ago as 4,000 years. And so this is one of the kind of most interesting early examples that have survived from ancient world of a technology that allowed this Babylonian Assyrian society to sustain itself by stretching great distances. That's just one example that is fascinating, the example of silver. But what you've brought up is also an important point. In Sumeria, which began another 1,000 years before this time I'm talking about, it started out in this swampland at the delta of the Tigris and the Euphrates, where they come into the Gulf. And you think, well, who were these early people that were the Sumerians? How did they develop? Well, imagine these people that basically moved on. All they had to build from were big grasses, reeds that they could turn into boats, reeds that they could turn into houses, and from that they built an extraordinary society out of that foundation. And part of it was through trade, and part of it was through controlling this swampland and turning it into a series of canals that they could then grow grain and grow date palms, and then and herd animals. sheep and goats and cattle. So they created this landscape. They turned it into a rich agricultural landscape, all of it based upon canals and controlling the water. And yet they still didn't have basic things like stone to build their houses. They had to make their houses out of mud, because the nearest place to get stone was in what is now Iran, and at that time it was called the Elamite Empire. So by 5,000 years BCE, if I have my chronology correct, in order to get stone bowls, which we find or have been found in archaeological context in ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Sumeria, they had to trade with these people that were in the Zagros Mountains in Persia. So what were they trading? We don't know. What did the people of Sumeria have to actually trade? Well, it looks like they had to probably trade things like textiles, because we can't imagine any kind of natural mineral resources that they had to offer. Now, out of the mud, what else did they create? They created writing, and they would use mud to refine. They would screen it so it was fairly refined. They would take this mud and they'd form it into little loaves, and out of these things they began to write, use pictograms at first. But what were they using these writings for? They were using it for accounting systems, like counting up how many sheep and goats were that a certain farmer had or owed to the temple. They used it for documenting transfers of land, because of course land was important. Land that was irrigated by canals was extraordinarily valuable. That's what the whole system depended upon. So we have early tablets from like 2,600 years ago that describe the transfer of property amongst peoples. When the transfer was particularly important to record, like who owns what piece of land, they actually used some of this rare commodity, the stone that they had to go find. They recorded it on stone as well. So property rights, a legal system to defend them, an accounting system to account for these big transfers of grain and cattle. And out of this, they built a whole business system, really. By 2,500 years ago, we have records of a whole business enterprises that were created to raise cattle, make cheese, deliver the cheese, deliver the milk, deliver the lard and the fat that derived from this. They were incredibly industrious, very organized in terms of the way they thought about value. And then they had an amazing system for recording what was going on, and contracting amongst themselves about who owes what to whom, and who puts capital into what kind of project, both locally in terms of businesses and enterprises, and of course with trade to the outside world. They had to get copper from somewhere to make bronze weapons. Where did they get the copper? Well, they had expeditions that went down the Persian Gulf, past or all along where the Emirates are now, and quite possibly made trips to south to India, or what is now India and Pakistan, the Indus River. So there it looks like there were very long distance connections, some of them particularly focused on supplying copper for the production of bronze weapons to the Sumerian cities. Of course, what did they do with this copper? Well, they made some tools, but they made weapons, and there were great wars that were fought amongst these Sumerian cities. So it wasn't always some big empire dominated by one king or emperor. It was from time to time competing city states, very much like medieval Italy, where the Venetians wouldn't get along with the Genoese, and they had great battles and so forth. So we can imagine a mercantile culture that was occasionally controlled and dominated within a city by a king or a priestly class, and other times, like the Assyrians, developed a republic for a time that was controlled by a council of merchants mostly, and so there was quite a bit of experiment over 2,000 or 3,000 years in the ancient Near East about the political structure for these financial endeavors.
Professor, I am more than happy to listen this all from you. It's a really happiness, this kind of matter. But there is some things that I have to ask you, Professor. If they go in different times, you have gone from more back in the time. You have passed few millennials by your speech, but they have organized pre-industrial, let's say, economy. They do cheese, they create cattle, and they do that buildings. But Professor, if the money was silver and they had to do a caravan to get the silver, or copper in India, silver in nowadays Turkey, is it too illogical for me to say that maybe between them contracts are where the money itself somehow, like they could invest between them, giving some tools, or okay, you have the expedition, I can provide you the food for the expedition, I can give you the weapons, and when you come back you have to give me back this amount of silver. So is it too illogical or risky to say that maybe money has came before as credit and then became the currency itself?
You're exactly right. Right now in the society, right now, if I opened up my wallet, you wouldn't find any paper money at all. I have credit cards. That means that my wealth is entirely money of account. It exists in accounts in different places, in different banks and in different credit companies. So I still call it money, but it's not. I don't have any. It's not coin or paper. That is the way that these ancient societies in the Middle East probably operated. Now, one of the reasons why they use silver for money is not because they would keep big piles of silver. It's not because you had to have silver to walk into the market. Probably what happened is that people would keep accounts with each other. And those obligations could be easily written down on clay tablets. Yes, there was almost certainly silver that was used from time to time to settle up accounts, but we shouldn't imagine that there was some kind of standardized coinage system in Sumerian Babylonian and Assyrian times, that didn't emerge in the ancient Near East until about 500 BCE, and that was along the coast of Anatolia in cities that were occupied by people we call Greeks. And it wasn't just there that coinage began. Coinage also emerged in China. It also emerged in India, although it's not yet clear when in India it emerged and whether or not it preceded or followed Alexander the Great's connection of the Greek society to Afghanistan and what's now Afghanistan and Pakistan and India. That kind of the some sense Hellenization of a great swath of Southern Asia. So it's a great mystery. Why did coinage appear within about 100 to 200 years, all across the Eurasian continent, at both ends of the Eurasian continent? How could these standardized units of metal suddenly appear as a new financial technology? Why did they appear? What's going on? We had trade already. The world had trade long before coinage appeared, so economists just don't have a great answer for that question, but it's an important one because the money in China looks very different than the money in the early Greek states. And the money that appeared in India looks very different than the money that appeared in the Greek states or the Chinese states. The money in India were typically clipped pieces of silver that are stamped with they're stamped with abstract marks. The money that appeared at first in Anatolia was electrum, which is an amalgam of gold and silver, with little pictures. They're tiny little pictures of like lions and things that on them. Eventually, those Greek coinages evolved into quite beautiful sculptural items. And then the money in China started out as little models of copper models and bronze models of farming implements like hoes or weapons like knives that then became sort of symbols of value. And so they don't look at all alike, but they function exactly the same way as units of value, mediums of exchange, and a numeraire by which you could say, okay, you owe me this much. And whether or not we count it out or put it into our accounting system by writing it down, this became a physical manifestation of, at least it became a physical manifestation of what we might think of as weights of silver that were certified by a stamp that meant that you could trust there was this much silver, this much copper, this much bronze in these objects.
Professor, can we say that, did I understand or suppose it correctly, that inside the societies, the trust or the legal apparatus was able to replace these coins for so much time that in Greece it appeared and has been used more time because Greece were more the city-states? Is it like the fragmentation, the political fragmentation in Greece could have request more I'm sorry, this word is, I was going to speak in Portuguese. Coinization, yeah. like that they needed to settle the payments between the different cities more than the Babylons and the Assyrians?
Well, now you're talking like an economist who's a theorist with a hypothesis. And so that's a hypothesis that is an interesting one, and we have to now think about how we would test that hypothesis. And so what you've proposed is that in a setting where you have rival city states that may trade with each other, but at times be at war with each other, did coinage solve a problem of how to transfer value back and forth? Is that
Yeah,
correct? That statement?
yeah. That's my that's
Yeah.
how I suppose.
So what we would want to do is then hypothesize what should we find when we do excavations in these different rival city states, or where should we expect to find the coinage of a particular city? Now, we do know that there are cases, let's say in medieval times, in medieval Italy, where we had rival city states, some coins circulated very widely. So the coins from Venice became currency that was widely accepted throughout the Eastern Mediterranean world. The coins from Florence, Firenze, also became coins that were widely accepted throughout areas of Europe. So that's consistent with somehow a dominant economy whose coins were accepted as mediums of exchange in other places. The evidence for this kind of there's counter evidence, however, and let me take the example of the coins of in China during the Warring States period. So there was a period of Chinese history that followed the original Chinese empire called the Shang civilization. There was a period that followed the fracturing of that society over time, called the Warring States period, where there are a number of China was divided up into a number of regional um, um, uh, warring states that fought great battles with each other. If anybody has read the classic book Sun Tzu, The Art of War, it was written about the wars that would occur amongst these warring states. And so this would be something like, oh, I should know these dates better, but something like 500 BC, 450 BCE to about 230 BCE. And so I, that was a period of where each of the city states made their own currencies. And so one of the most powerful of these was in the province of Shandong right now, and that's the area of China that extends out a bit. It's like an arm that sticks out towards the east, and it still is a very rich agricultural area of China, and it was called the state of Qi, QI, and yeah, its capital was called Linzi, Linzi, and the city still exists. You can visit it as a tourist. It's got great city walls. It's got burials of the dukes of Qi. It was a city that, in some ways, similar to Ashur. It was a merchant city. At that time, it was on a river that boats could go back and forth and trade. And when early Chinese historians would write about the city, they would write about it as a city dominated by business and trade and economics. It had a very distinctive kind of coinage shaped like a curved knife with the name of the city written on it. And if your hypothesis is correct, we should see if Qi was trading with the city states around it, we should see those coins appearing in archaeological context in the other provinces with which it traded. In fact, most of the coins of these distinctive knife-shaped coins are only found in the province. And so it suggests that somehow the coinage in China existed as a currency of trade within the province and not long-distance trade. And that tends to be true for the other kinds of coins that appear as well. So that's a puzzle. Like, well, what were they trading with each other when they traded traded long distances? The state of Qi. Actually, it's an important city, important state that encompassed the whole province of what is now Shandong. It was the very last city that was conquered by the first Chinese emperor named Qin Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor. And so, by conquering Qi, it became the vast state of Qin, which is the word China. So this is how China was formed when Qi was finally absorbed into this empire. But when these coins were being made, the strange thing about them was that they were mostly archaeological discoveries has suggest that most of the trade using these coins was internal to the state of Qi. So mostly traded in what's now Shandong. So somehow the coins were not a medium of exchange across the states, but within the states. So we have examples from around the world in these early days of certain currencies being, I would call, widely used by trade, and certain currencies, even within very powerful trading societies, only being confined within their borders. So it adds to the puzzle about what was the function of coinage, how did it work, why was it being created? We do know that, and we know from Sun Tzu, The Art of War, that soldiers were really important when you had rival cities. And one way to pay soldiers is with coinage. And we know, for example, the Roman Empire depended upon coinage to pay their soldiers as they were fighting all throughout Europe. In fact, Rome had mobile mints that could follow where the soldiers were to make coins to pay them. So one of the hypotheses about the importance of coinage links it to the importance of armies that needed to get paid while they were fighting. So that's one hypothesis. Of course, we might find, and perhaps sometimes we do find, when I say we, archaeologists have found, when they find coins in archaeological context, they often find them in kind of a pot or a bag that's been buried by somebody who was probably fleeing an army. and never came back to reclaim their savings. So coins also might be related to the people perpetually fighting against each other.
It's very interesting. And in Spanish, until now, the name of the payment of from the army, it's soldo, like the
Soldo.
way that Professor. So uh, we are finishing. I'm get already a lot of time from you. So the finance is the technology that shaped the civilization. And so we can say that some civilizations have not have deal different with their own systems. Indeed, if they need currency, if they need more legal background, like the Sumerians. So we can say that the currency is came from directly from the society itself, and this shapes the behavior with the commodity that will be used to settle the payment.
So, well, I guess that that is just a way of describing these payment systems. But we have to consider the fact that most of us have grown up in a society where we have very clear definitions of money in the way we use it now. It's very hard to imagine how payment systems might have existed in different times and places. We're very much constrained in some way when we talk about money by our current institutional structures. I can give you an example. I'll be off the screen for just a moment.
That's okay.
Now I'm back on screen.
Oh, what is it, Professor?
Show your viewers this thing. This is a piece of African money. And it's probably something that was made 100 years ago or 200 years ago, perhaps. It's not really that old, but you can see that you could wear it like this in order to display to people this decorative item. But it's also something that's used in traditional African society, and I think it's from the modern, what's now the modern country of Cameroon. And it could be used for major events like during a wedding, or perhaps for a transfer of a piece of property or something. But what it's fascinating about it is that even though the form of a necklace is standard, it's got a lot of decorative things to it that add to its value. So somehow it is both a piece of money, but also a piece of art. And it's also a piece of something that you could wear. And all of these different features of it add value in different ways, but may also subtract value in different ways. Like, it can be too big to wear, so it has to be within a certain scale. Then what if you had some things that didn't have such beautiful decoration? They'd be worth less. They're not comparable in terms of value to each other. So when we define money, we like to have certain things about it that we can trust, and those things are standardization, and those things are fungibility. So it doesn't depend on how one thing particularly looks good. It doesn't require you to make a decision about whether you like one necklace or the other. And that means that you can have 10 necklaces that look exactly alike, and that becomes a large stockpile of wealth. But imagine in a society that might value the aesthetic features of the things more or less. Fungibility could be, especially for large transfers like the dowry, that is a rare but important process of value exchange during a period as a result of a wedding. You could imagine the aesthetic and ceremonial features of money being extremely important as opposed to simply the fungibility and the ability to accumulate a lot of things that look exactly the same. And now, in our modern society, we also have this kind of evolution from things that are fungible, like coins, up to symbols of wealth, like contemporary paintings that are worth $400 million, that can also be imagined as money, that also is embedded in a social context of demonstration of aesthetic appreciation. And so art, to be extremely valuable, art has to have an aesthetic nature to it. It has to have some quality to it. It has to be distinctive. But make no mistake, the accumulation of very expensive works of art has for centuries been associated with the final stage in the development of a very wealthy life. So it makes you think harder about what exactly is money, and a bit about where does finance stop and where does culture and social context begin.
Professor, our time is going, but I really have to ask you one thing, because you now speak about ceremonial, and the orange, the start of money, the beginning of money, maybe maybe no. I mean, there is some evidence or some theories that are well accepted that money maybe came also from rituals in Mesopotamia, like for the temples, because we know that the moneta in Latin came from the temple that I forgot the name of the godness now, but that they did one of the coins of them. From Sumerian, Babylon, or even earlier, can we say that money maybe also came from rituals for the temples, for religion? Is it accurate to say that?
Well, that's very interesting because human society, human societies quite broadly, have had religions that require sacrifice to deities. And although today we don't have, most societies don't associate finance with religion, there have been many societies in the past where these two things are more closely related. So, as you say, the Greek temples themselves were often storehouses of coins and value. And for example, the Parthenon the Parthenon in Greece, the front part of the Parthenon had the temple had the statue of Athena, encrusted with gold and ivory, by the way. The back part had big boxes full of coins. Was it just a bank? No, it was a temple, but it was a storehouse of value. Similar for other kinds of temples in Delphi, in Greece as well. Another example that comes to mind is that during in the period after the Roman Empire stopped its trade with India, from about 500 AD up until about 1300, the South Indian trade with Indonesia was very much associated with the spread of two religions. One of them is the Brahmin, the Hindu religion, and the other one is the Buddhist religion. And the trade groups, the trade guilds from Tamil Nadu, which is a southern part of India, was closely associated with the trade of religion, and the merchants would give part of their wealth would endow the temples and pay for their building. And we can sort of see this merchant related co-movement of the spread of both Buddhism and Hinduism throughout Southeast Asia. Of course, the greatest example of that are the remarkable Hindu temples in Cambodia. So Angkor Wat and all the related temples around there are connected to the trade that was done with India. And in Indonesia, Borobudur is another vast temple complex that's based on a Buddhist template. So this connection to religion, and even having the religious architecture associated with merchants, is something that we're not used to today in European and North American culture. But that's not to say that these institutional structures were not really important. I guess one last example here is that in Central Asia, along the Silk Road, and from Afghanistan to China, the Buddhist monasteries became essentially the lending institutions in many cases for merchants. So they also functioned perhaps like banks from time to time. So let's not leave the religious dimension out of this, because reliable institutions that stood for ethical and moral behavior, which is an important dimension of doing business, must have been important throughout history.
It is very interesting, Professor. I could speak with you endless about these matters. We are out of time. You have your agenda. It's almost 1 hour. Do you have anything else that you would like to mention before we finish?
Not at all. I'm just very happy to have this chance to talk with you about the ancient development of finance. I'm thrilled that your listeners are also curious about the early development of money and finance and in society.
It is very interesting, Professor, and this kind of deep acknowledgement is not well spread in Portuguese language, and most of Brazilians have no abilities of English to be able to in contact with it. And I'm really thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed, and we can have more conversations in near future. I would just say bye to audience em português. Pessoal, muito obrigado por estar até aqui. Curtam, compartilhem. Fiquem com Deus.